Are the physical conditions of a real estate parcel covered under the typical land title insurance policy? No. The answer is no. Nada, zilch, nothing. So most standard title insurance policies, even on a commercial real estate transaction, are not going to cover physical conditions. So now there's some people that are probably freaking out right now. There's probably some people that sell title insurance that might be freaking out right now. You know, how could Landon say such a thing? So I want to explain a little bit. So what do we mean when I say physical conditions aren't covered under the typical title insurance policy? What do I mean by physical conditions? Okay, so we want to explain that. We're going to do that in this video. The second thing we're going to talk about is why. Why don't title insurance companies cover physical conditions? Are they trying to cheat you? There's actually a good reason why they don't. So I want to explain what that reason is. And then we want to talk about how. How do title insurance companies exclude physical conditions from the typical title policy? There's a very specific way that they do that. You want to be able to identify that in your preliminary title report, which is basically an offer to insure a particular piece of parcel. So let's get to that first question. When I say that a title insurance policy, typical title insurance policy, doesn't insure physical conditions, what do I mean by physical conditions? So physical conditions are basically the type of improvements on the parcel, the location of those improvements, and the area of any lands or buildings. Now, that's a short list. There's only 3 things on that list, but it covers quite a bit. And if you think about it, we're talking about any physical improvements and the buildings on the property. In most cases, especially commercial real estate, that is the bulk of the value of the transaction. So I want you to think about the implications of that for a minute. What that means is your title insurance policy doesn't cover the bulk of the value of your particular real estate parcel. That's the typical policy doesn't include that from coverage. So that's significant, right? If you're worried about what type of improvements are on the property or where they're located or how, what the square footage of the parcel is or what the square footage of the building is, your title insurance policy typically is not going to cover those things. So you've got to do some other things if you're worried about any of those physical conditions that we just mentioned. So why aren't physical conditions of a real estate parcel typically covered in a land title insurance policy? There's a good reason for that. The title companies aren't trying to cheat you or pull a fast one. It's because land title insurance is based on a title search. I've got some other videos that talk about what a title search is, but it's basically an inspection of the publicly recorded land records, land transaction records. So that's what a company is basing the title insurance policy on. It is not based on a physical inspection of the property, and it's not based on a survey. Your typical title insurance policy is not issued with the benefit of a survey, and nobody from the title company is going out to actually physically look at the property. So that's why they don't cover physical conditions. They're only going to cover things that are described in the land transaction documents that are going to be recorded down at the clerk and recorder typically. So that brings us to the last question for this video, which is how then do title insurance companies typically exclude physical conditions from the policy? So you need to know that because you want to be able to look at the title insurance policy that's being offered and understand if that typical exclusion is in your policy or not. So they do that typically with 1 to 2 ways. There's an exception, kind of what we call a boilerplate exception that's called the physical inspection exception, and it typically says something like we exclude from coverage any problem that might be revealed by a physical inspection of the property or physical inspection of the premises or some kind of language like that. Okay, that's a clue that the title insurance company isn't going to cover anything, any physical conditions, any claims related to physical improvements or buildings. Okay, the second way they do that is with an exception that says that they exclude from coverage any matters that would be revealed by correct survey or something similar to that, language similar to that. That's the standard boilerplate survey exception. So if you see either one of those things in your title insurance policy, they're not covering the physical conditions of the property for the reasons that we talked about earlier. So in summary, physical conditions of a real estate parcel are not covered under the typical land title insurance policy, even for commercial real estate policies. So you want to protect yourself, get a survey, remove the survey exception from the policy, title insurance policy. If there's specific aspects of the physical conditions of the property that you're concerned about as a buyer, your land surveyor can investigate those things when he's on the property doing the survey, or she is doing the survey. You can talk to your survey about that. If they can't handle the particular item that you're concerned about, maybe it's subsurface contamination or the quality of the foundation of the building, a good land surveyor can usually put you in contact with another professional that can address the kind of issues that you're concerned about. Do that due diligence, because those types of problems are not going to be covered under your land title insurance policy.